Hi guys! So, I know so many people have been saying they miss their YSL fam, and for better or for worse, we gather here again today for RICO again. So we're going to see how this case, the Atlanta rapper Cash Out, is part of a RICO trial with two co-defendants. Adriane Love is going to make an appearance. She's not going to do the opening statements, but here she is in live, living color. We've got Careton Matthews, Sr. and Jr. making an appearance. They are attorneys for Cash Out. Some serious stuff. This is just for Cash Out. So his name is John Michael HAKEEM Gibson, a.k.a. Cash Out. You can see this is, I got to scroll a little bit to get all of his charges on screen. We're going to hear about a lot of this in the opening statements. One thing I want to highlight before we get into it, so you listen for it when Careton Matthews is up. We've had a lot of discussion about 16-11-133, verse 131. The possession of a firearm, and then there's elements attached to it after that. Well, here, we're going to have some indictment issues, even though this is a re-indictment and they had a chance to get it right. I want you guys to pay attention when we get there. Possession of a firearm or knife during commission or attempt to commit certain felonies. So this is conditional, right? 16-11-106. It's not just possession. It's possession also while committing or attempting to commit certain felonies. We're going to get a ton of deja vu. So without giving too many spoilers away, we're going to start with the beginning of what Fox 5 Atlanta caught. It's going to start in the middle of a discussion. We didn't really miss anything substantive. We're going to get into opening statements by the prosecution. Ms. Winfrey is the prosecutor delivering opening statements, so she might be new to some of us. Different judge, Judge Leftridge. And let's see what's different. Let's see what's the same. Hate all the familiar faces. This is the YSL slime family back in the building. We got Shannon, we got Fatima. Black Butterfly, of course, one of the OGs. Good to see you. Erica Roberts is already saying, oh no, not love again. KP has made it over. Pink Slime is here. We got two pinks. Peter Ortiz is here telling Erica, you know you miss love. Tay Biz says, just seeing her face on the thumbnail gives me unpleasant memories. Mary W's here, Mr. Meme. Kevin Kirksey, long time no see. But yes, we are back, for better or for worse. Felicia Fee and crushing hard on Max Shart. So, no Max Shart in this trial, but maybe we'll get some steaming of the bald heads. So let's make this bigger. Let's do what we do, chat. It is good to be back with everybody. Captions going. Here we go.
The RICO Act, rape, aggravated sodomy, trafficking a person for sexual servitude, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment, pandering by compulsion, possession of cocaine, tampering with evidence, willful obstruction of a law enforcement officer, and pimping as set forth in the indictment, and a true verdict give according to the evidence, so help you God. If so, please answer, I do. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now ready to begin the trial of this case. I have some preliminary matters to discuss with you. I've already introduced my staff, and I encourage you to approach them if you have any questions. You will report to the hallway that you just came through, next to courtroom 8C, and ring the buzzer always that says Judge Leftridge next to it. You will be buzzed into the hallway, and you will proceed to my jury room. Ladies and gentlemen, from this point forward, you will not enter the courtroom unless Sergeant Pilgrim brings you out from the jury room. After breaks and at the beginning of the day, you will go straight to the jury room from the elevators. Please wear layered clothing. Sometimes it is cold in the jury room and in the courtroom. We have a refrigerator, a toaster oven, and a microwave available for your use. Please bring snacks and your lunch. Unfortunately, there are very little available food choices around this courthouse.
Yeah, remember Woody?
I will ask that you wear your juror stickers whenever you are in the courthouse. This is so the lawyers and the witnesses can identify you as a juror. From this point on, the lawyers, parties, witnesses, and anyone else associated with this case in any way, with the exception of my staff, are prohibited from having any contact with you whatsoever. So if you happen to encounter any such persons on the street or in the elevator, please do not attempt to communicate with them in any way, and do not be offended when they ignore you. They are not trying to be rude. They are simply abiding by the law. If for some reason you have contact with one of the lawyers, or if you inadvertently overhear something about the case, please notify my deputy immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, we will generally hold court from 9 o'clock until between 5 and 6:30 p.m. With a 1-hour break for lunch around the noon time, whatever makes sense. Sometimes it'll be 1 o'clock, sometimes it'll be noon. It just depends. For the sake of your fellow jurors, please arrive on time, as we cannot begin or continue the case until all jurors are present. If something unexpected happens and you absolutely cannot help being late, please call my office immediately. We will provide you with the number. You will reach out to Ms. Tomlinson, my judicial assistant. Again, you are not to discuss
Love
the case
already
with
nodding at the
anyone or
jury.
allow anyone to discuss it
She
in your
just did that.
presence. And I need to remind you not to watch TV or read newspaper accounts, no social media, no posting regarding the case. In other words, I'm not saying you can't watch TV, but if something were to pop up on the television related to this case, then you should immediately turn the channel, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it might be helpful if I give you some preliminary instructions concerning criminal law and trial procedure, which will apply to this criminal case. A crime is a violation of a statute of this state in which there shall be a union or joint operation of act and intention. That is, a crime is committed when a person violates a statute of this state by acting as prohibited, while at the same time he has a criminal intention and no other defense excuses the conduct. A person will not be presumed to act with criminal intention. However, you, the jury, may find such intention upon consideration of the words, conduct, demeanor, motive, and all other circumstances connected with the act for which the accused is being prosecuted. The state cannot bring a person accused of a felony to trial unless the grand jury has first indicted that person. Grand jurors do not try criminal cases. They ordinarily only hear from witnesses for the state. When a criminal case is tried, the defendant has pled not guilty to the indictment. This plea of not guilty denies every essential allegation of the indictment and forms the issue or question that you as the trial jury will decide. The indictment and the plea of not guilty to it are the legal procedures by which the state brings charges against the accused into court. They are not evidence, and you should not consider them to be evidence. Every person is presumed innocent until proven guilty. No person shall be convicted of a crime unless each element of the crime is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The state has the burden to prove each essential element of each crime charged beyond a reasonable doubt. In this state, a defendant on trial may or may not testify as he or she chooses. If the defendant does testify, you would judge his or her credibility by the same tests applied to any other witness. If the defendant does not testify, which is the defendant's absolute constitutional right, you shall not draw any inference of guilt from this decision, and the defendant's election not to testify may not in any way affect your verdict. Moreover, the defendant has no duty to call any witnesses or present any evidence during the trial. If he or she calls no witnesses or presents no evidence, you may not derive any inference of guilt from such failure to produce evidence. In such case, you decide guilt on whether the state's evidence proves the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Under our
Right, so while it's zoomed in here, you guys should all recognize Careton Matthews Sr. and Careton Matthews Jr. In the middle here is one of the defendants. I would say, if we're going with the big fish concept again, this is Cash Out, this is the big fish. I'm sure they're going to refer to him by last name HAKEEM. Full name is GIBSON. Full name is John Michael HAKEEM GIBSON, but maybe they'll refer to him as just the defendant as we move on. There are two other defendants We'll see if we can see them better when this pans away. But for reference, we have Linda Smith, who's known as Morenika Vinnie, and also known as Mama Cash Out, and then Tyrone Taylor. So those are the other two co-defendants there.
In our system, I have the duty as the trial judge to decide the law that applies to a case and instruct you on it. You have the duty as the jury to decide the facts in a case from the evidence and reasonable inferences arising from the evidence. In reaching your verdict, you also have the duty to apply the law to those facts. You decide the facts from the evidence. The evidence has two parts: testimony of witnesses and exhibits. A witness means anyone who testifies in person from the stand. The exhibits are those documents, objects, or photos that the court admits into evidence. You will have most of the exhibits with you in the jury room while you deliberate. However, there are some exhibits which cannot be sent to the jury room, so it will be important that you pay close attention to all of the exhibits admitted during the trial. I caution you that what the lawyers say during the trial is not evidence. Also, anything I might do or say is not evidence. I have no leanings at all in this case. My only interest is to have the case tried fairly and according to the law and the constitutions of this state and the United States. You are the exclusive judges of the witnesses' credibility. That is, you decide the truthfulness and reasonableness of their testimony. You may believe or disbelieve all or any part of the testimony of any witness. You have the duty to decide what testimony is worthy of belief and what testimony is not worthy of belief. You should lay aside any preconceived notions and not decide a witness's credibility until the witness has testified. This is true no matter who the witness is, whether a victim of a crime, the defendant on trial, a police officer, an expert in some field, or otherwise. But remember that the defendant has no duty to testify or present any evidence whatsoever. Rules of law govern what the court admits into evidence. If an attorney objects to the admission of evidence, then I must rule on the objection and decide whether you can consider the evidence. You should understand that there are two ways that I can respond to an objection. If I say sustained, then that means that I granted the objection and you should not consider the objected to evidence. If I say overruled, then that means that I did not grant the objection and you may consider the objected to evidence. You should not infer or assume anything from either the lawyer's objections or the court's rulings. During this trial, the court will have to consider some issues outside of your presence. When that occurs, I shall excuse you to the jury room for a time. During these periods, the court will do its best to handle the matter as promptly as the law permits. These interruptions, ladies and gentlemen, may occur frequently or infrequently. They may occur very close in time to one another or far apart from each other. They may last for what feels like a short period of time or a lengthy period of time. I wish for you to understand that this is a common occurrence and ask for your continued patience when this happens during the course of the trial. Now, the procedure in a criminal trial is generally as follows. First, the lawyers for both sides may make an opening statement to you. This opening statement is not evidence itself. Remember, what the lawyers say is not evidence. However, it is a preview or an outline of what they expect the evidence to show. Following the opening statements, the state has the opportunity to present evidence to support the charges against the defendants, and the defendants have the opportunity, if he or she so elect, to present evidence in his or her defense. This part of a trial is called each party's case in chief. In the state's case in chief, the state calls its witnesses and introduces any exhibits. When these witnesses testify, they may be cross-examined by the defendant. When the state has presented all of its evidence, the state will rest its case. Then, if the defendant elects to present any evidence, the defendants may call his or her witnesses and introduce his or her exhibits. Of course, when these witnesses testify, they may be cross-examined by the state. However, the defendant has no duty to testify or present any evidence whatsoever. After the presentation of the evidence, the lawyers may make a closing argument to you. At this time, the lawyers will try to persuade you to decide the case in their favor. Following the closing arguments, I will charge or instruct you more
3 cards of evidence
on the law that directly
or is that the
applies
second
to
handle?
this
I think
case.
there's 2 cards.
Then you will retire to the jury room to deliberate and reach your verdict. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not an exhaustive description of the procedure in a criminal trial, but hopefully it will give you a quick overview which will help you to understand the trial as it proceeds. It is your duty to follow any instructions that the court may give you during the case. Please remember to listen carefully to all of the evidence. Do not jump to conclusions before the parties present all the evidence. Also, please remember that during a trial, it would be improper for you to discuss the case with anyone or to allow anyone to discuss the case with you or in your presence or within your hearing. Also, during the trial, you should not communicate with the parties, their lawyers, or any of the witnesses or anyone else other than members of my staff. Under this rule, you should not engage in even social greetings or small talk with anyone involved with this case in any way. Again, please understand that the lawyers and the parties should not speak with you as the trial progresses and will likely avoid speaking with you to ensure there is no appearance of impropriety. These restrictions also apply to the friends and family members of interested parties. During this trial, the law will not require that you be kept together during breaks for meals or at night. When you return to the courthouse from any adjournment for meals or the night, please go directly to the jury room. This will lessen the opportunity for an accidental meeting with a person that you may not know is involved with the case. If there is any coverage of the case by newspaper, radio, television, or other media, you should be careful not to consider it. Do not independently investigate any facts or visit any scenes depicted in the evidence. Do not independently research any law concerning the case. For example, you are prohibited from doing any such independent investigation or research concerning a case on the internet. You've now received several specific instructions that make it clear that you cannot conduct independent research of the case and cannot communicate about the case by electronic devices or otherwise. I've said it repeatedly because it is important that the only evidence you consider is that which is produced within this courtroom. Please be careful to abide by the rules of the court. Ladies and gentlemen, to preserve the integrity of the jury room, the jury system, you as the finders of fact must decide this case solely upon evidence presented in this courtroom. This means that during the trial, you must not conduct any independent research about this case, the matters in the case, and the individuals involved in the case. In other words, you should not consult dictionaries or reference materials, search the internet websites or blogs, or use any other electronic tools to obtain information about this case or to help you to decide the case. I know that many of you use cell phones, iPads, computers, and other tools of technology which are right at your fingertips. Please do not try to find out information from any source outside the confines of this courtroom, to include media of any sort or online legal research. Ladies and gentlemen, until you retire to deliberate, you may not discuss this case with anyone, even your fellow jurors. After you retire to deliberate, you may begin discussing the case with your fellow jurors, but you cannot discuss the case with anyone else until you have returned a verdict and the case is at an end. You also must not talk to anyone about this case or use tools to communicate electronically with anyone about the case. This includes your family and friends. You must not communicate with anyone about the case on your cell phone, through email, iPhone, text messaging, or on Twitter, through any blog or website, through any internet chat room, or by way of any other social networking websites, including Facebook, MySpace, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I've asked Sergeant Pilgrim to provide you with pencils and notepads for your use during the trial. You have those, is that correct? You may take notes, but you are not required to do so. If you decide to take notes, please remember that note-taking should not divert you from paying full attention to the evidence and evaluating witness credibility. Your observations of the witnesses during their testimony can be vital to your determination of the believability of their testimony. The notes that you take are for your use only and are not to be shared with anyone until you begin deliberation with your fellow jurors. Notes are not evidence, only memory aids, and should not take precedence over your recollection. It is the duty of each juror to recall the evidence, and while you may consider another juror's notes to refresh your memory, you should rely on your own recollection of the proceedings. Ladies and gentlemen, do not be influenced by the notes of other jurors unless their notes help you in determining your own independent recollection. Notes are not entitled to any greater weight than the recollection or impression of each juror as to what the evidence may have been. Ladies and gentlemen, after the trial is over, the notes will be collected and destroyed. That concludes my preliminary instructions, and now we are ready for the lawyers to offer you opening statements. On behalf of the state, is there a desire to offer this jury an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You have the floor to do so at this time, Ms. Winfrey.
This is Earnelle Winfrey.
You're welcome.
Sigh of relief that it's not Adriane Love. Sorry to disappoint you or excite you, Danny.
Promises.
But good to see you.
Promises of love. Promises of safety. Promises of a better life. Promises to level up. Promises to lay your head down in a safe place. Promises, promises, promises. You will learn that there were promises given in this case. They were cloaked in profit, cloaked in greed. In their arrogance, predators target the weak who are caught in the schemes they devise. Their eyes watch in secret for their victims like
Here we go.
Hidden in rocks. They eyes watch in secret for their victims like rattlesnakes hidden in rocks.
Drop some snake emojis in the chat. They just have to work in a wildlife reference in these opening statements. I don't know if it's just when love is present that it has to be done, or what kind of like secret inside joke this is. But this is what I saw when I opened the stream earlier, right before I started my other stream. That's the line I heard, and I said, oh, here we go. Here we go. Oh.
They lie in wait seeking to devour. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that is what this case is about.
Oh, rattlesnakes.
This case is about these defendants. These defendants who built a proverbial house, if you will, a business on the backs of young women through the lure of their leaders' notoriety. Good afternoon, my name is Earnelle Winfrey, as I stated earlier. I, along with my co-counsel, Chief Deputy District Attorney Adriane Love, Deputy District Attorney Grant Blue, represent the state of Georgia. First, I want to thank you for your patience during the arduous task of jury selection, and I thank you in advance for your service today. As you see the evidence unfold in this case, you may see witnesses that may not be in chronological order. Don't be alarmed. Just stay with us to the very end. It'll all make sense.
We've tried that before.
Players. John Michael HAKEEM GIBSON, also known as Cash Out. You will learn that he is the leader of this organization. You heard the word enterprise. It's just a group of people doing criminal acts for money in this case. You will learn that he's the one who set up plays and dates through cell phones, who lured girls in through his notoriety, who promised love and other things to get them to comply, who then turned coercive toward the end. Linda Smith, also known as Morenika Vinnie, also known as Mama Cash Out. You will learn that she is the mother of John Michael Gibson. And you will also learn all of her involvement even including being a manager of sorts, even making clothes for girls to wear as they sold themselves. Tyrone Taylor, also known as Brewski, you will learn that he is a cousin of Cash Out, John Gibson, and you will learn of his involvement. He was like a recruiter. You'll learn that he was trying to be close to someone who's famous to be somebody. You'll learn that he got involved with a young girl he never even knew before, with a promise of a safe place for her to lay her head. And you'll learn of his involvement with other witnesses in this case. The house that Cash built, literally and proverbially, it was built on exploitation, built on girls who were vulnerable. During the course of this trial, you will hear evidence about a criminal enterprise. Now that's a legal term. Don't get confused about that. Like I said, it's just a group of people committing crimes for profit. They organize themselves and they work together to do it. This organization works in the shadows, but it also works in plain sight. They built it by exploiting others, exploiting young women, fueled by deception and coercion, especially young women. Driven by profit and greed. Orchestrated by each of them. It was a criminal conspiracy that preyed on vulnerable young women for the purpose of making money. This case is about manipulation. It's about control, mental manipulation. It's about isolation. This case is also about violence. Now you've heard at the beginning of the trial all these different counts. You've heard racketeering, you've heard RICO. RICO is just a pattern that we're going to show that they use to do these criminal acts. Several criminal acts they use to advance
Just a pattern.
the organization to make money. The evidence will show that they operated in a group. You will hear about trafficking a person for sexual servitude. You'll hear about pimping, pandering, tampering with evidence, obstruction. All of these criminal acts operating in concert to show that they operated together. That's all RICO is. You will hear from survivors, women who were groomed, women who were isolated and sold. You will see records and messages, financial transactions, witness testimony, victim testimony, all calculated and designed to profit off of human suffering. You will also hear from expert witnesses in this case. Specifically, you will hear from an expert witness whose name is Mary Beth Nelson. She is a witness on human trafficking, and she will give you education and provide the dynamics of sex trafficking and debunk the big myths about trafficking. She'll debunk the myth about sex trafficking being the proverbial white van that runs around and snatches women and children off the street and sells them into sex slavery. She'll talk about it being up close and personal and intimate. She'll explain to you the nomenclature or the verbiage used in commercial sex so you'll understand when the evidence comes out what is being said and what it means. You'll hear from DNA experts, and it's up to you to judge the credibility and the believability of all the witnesses, to include DNA experts, and they will provide their findings. So, who are we really talking about here? This case centers around victims, and you heard many names at the beginning of the initial questioning when you all were sitting in the general audience. You will learn about Jasmine Brown. You will learn that she's from Delaware and was a ward of the state, meaning she didn't have connected family. You will learn that her first play was a violent rape set up by her trafficker, John Michael HAKEEM GIBSON. You will learn that she ended up getting out of that situation by some brave law enforcement folks who stepped in and saw her and helped her get out. And it was from her disclosure that all the broke over who were able to find other survivors and victims to bring these defendants to justice. You will learn about Jordan Adams, who was also a vulnerable young woman who had gotten kicked out of her home and was on the streets of Atlanta. She ran into Tyrone Taylor, also known as Brewski, who promised her a safe place to lay her head that night at a hotel on Fulton Industrial Boulevard. Unbeknownst to her, she's raped and she is sodomized. You will learn that Mr. Taylor, Defendant Taylor, he invited Cash Out over to have fun with her as well, and she was victimized all night long. You will learn she was also then put out on the street to go and sell herself. You will learn about Jessica McQuarrie, who's from Indiana, and she was involved with Cash Out during the early years. Dominique Lewis-House, you'll learn about her. Talicia Dewberry, Frederica Spencer, Talithia Wright, Shantori Tolbert, Diamond Irving. You will learn that while each of them found themselves in this heinous situation, the one common thread is that while they suffered, they survived. They were robbed of their dignity and cloaked in shame. You will show that the defendants in this case use threats of harm, physical harm, psychological abuse, financial control, and drugs to trap their victims. And we will demonstrate that this organized group had a command structure, specific roles, specific rules, but the product in this case was human beings. Human beings used over and over and over again. You will learn how Cash Out and his mother, Mama Cash Out, and the cousin Brewski, because it's all in the family, and how they work together in order to obtain this goal. This goal was to make money, motivated by money. The enterprise, it used tactics designed to recruit women, designed to control women, designed to exploit young women. Some of these women were often desperate. For the purpose of commercial sex, this is what they were obtained for. They lured them through a pattern of systematic plans. All of this, again, to gain money. The victims were groomed, isolated from their families, and coerced. And the people sitting behind this operation, they knew exactly what they were doing. The house that they built, the foundation is greed. The backs of the young women that made the money for them, they had no control of the money they made. Some of them subject to sexual violence, some of them subject to physical violence, all of them subject to psychological violence. Now, there's something important you will hear in this work. Two of the Codefendants, individuals who were once part of this very enterprise, will take the stand and they will testify for the prosecution. They will tell you what they saw, they will tell you what they did, and they will tell you what these defendants did. The witnesses were not promised anything in return, no deals, no promises, no favors. They are coming forward because the truth matters. And because they know what happened, they know it must be brought to the light. Their testimony will be of Kiera Adams. You will learn that she's been involved with Cash Out from even early on, since about 2014 to about 2022. Intimately involved with the inner workings and dealings of this organized way of committing crimes. She will describe to you in detail all that she did, her part in it, and all that they did, and their part in it. You will also hear from Deanna Sanders. She was in a relationship with Cash Out. And you will learn that all of these girls believed that they were in a relationship with Cash Out. All of them learned and felt as though he loved them, or they were his girlfriend, or they were his wife, or soon-to-be wife. All of that. And Deanna Sanders will talk to you about her physical abuse at the hands of these women. You will have corroboration. You will have testimony, will be supported by a mountain of evidence, text messages, financial records, witness accounts, victim testimony, all of it pointing to the same conclusion. The defendants work together, exploiting human lives for profit. Now, the court already instructed the burden is on us, it's on the state. The defendants have no burden whatsoever. They don't have to put up a scintilla of evidence at all. But I want to inform you to be mindful of the distractions, to not go down the rabbit holes. The evidence will be the evidence. I ask you to take notes, copious notes. We'll be here for a while. So you may not
Copious
remember
notes.
from the first day to the last day. This evidence will be disturbing. I will admit the details will be hard to listen to and difficult, but they are necessary. Because at the end of this trial, the only conclusion the evidence will support is that the defendants ran a criminal enterprise that trafficked human beings. Defendants Taylor and defendants GIBSON even sodomized and raped one of the victims. And this pattern of criminal behavior must be brought to light. And the defendants must be held accountable. You will learn that there is nothing that is concealed that will not be disclosed or hidden, and that all will be made known. What has been done and said in the dark will be heard in the daylight. And what has been whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed from this witness stand. I will come back to you at the end of this case, and we will talk about all the evidence you heard, and we will review all the applicable law. And I will come back and ask you to find all of the defendants guilty. Thank you for your attention.
All right. Mr. Matthews, on behalf.
Yeah. So I was just scrolling because a lot of, like, what does this say on the screen? I see state's motion to grant material witness use and derivative use immunity, Deanna Sanders. State's motion to grant material witness use and derivative use immunity, Kiera Adams. Is this like old? Last refreshed? Case filed? Because as far as I know, the re-indictment that they're using is from 2023, so I think I'm in the right place. I can't open the documents, but I don't know, maybe it was denied. Maybe it was denied. Oh, why is it sped up? Hold on.
Offer this jury an opening statement.
Yes, Your Honor.
You have the floor to do so at this time, sir.
Thank you.
The Careton Matthews chat. I have no idea if Viverito's actually involved. We're just wondering who's seeing the rattlesnakes that were mentioned in opening statements. Get it together, Careton. I'm going to get my stream deck set up and put that noise in here. A different sound effect.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I want to take this opportunity to thank you in advance for your time and your attention that you have given to us for these last 7 or 8 days in getting you all selected. We have selected the jury that is the fairest jury to hear this case. I have an opportunity and a privilege and an honor to represent Mr. John Michael GIBSON, along with myself and Attorney Careton Matthews Jr. You have been impaneled, ladies and gentlemen, to hear and listen to evidence and law in this case. The trial of John Michael Gibson, a.k.a. Cash Out. Who is John Michael Gibson? He's 34 years old. He's an American rapper. He was born in Columbus, Georgia. He moved to the Atlanta area as a teen. Came from humble beginnings. He moved to Atlanta, Georgia, living with his mother and his siblings, east side of Atlanta, and he developed a love for music. He worked hard in the development of his craft. He didn't allow his humble beginnings, he did not allow where he was born, he did not allow his circumstances to stop his dreams. What were his dreams, ladies and gentlemen? His dreams were to write music, to write lyrics, become an artist, sell records, to do concerts. Through his hard work, through his dedication, through his sacrifice, that came to fruition. He went in a studio right here in the Atlanta area, started working, started putting his talent to work, putting his hard work and his sacrifice to effort. And that effort began to pay off. So he was 21 years old when music executive L.A. Reid invited him to New York City along with his local management to be signed. Mr. Gibson, he performed for L.A. Reid up in New York City. When he performed for them, they spent the entire day talking in a boardroom with industry executives. And they signed John Michael Gibson, Cash Out, Epic Records. When they signed Mr. Gibson, his first major song was a song by the name of Cash It Out. It was released in March.
Heck yeah, I think half the chat has to know that song.
It peaked at number 36 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was runner-up in the hip-hop department. And it topped
The hip-hop department.
as hot rap songs. Mr. Gibson toured all over the nation. Every city, every state. He was famous, and still is. He was known. His songs were being played all summer long, all year long. And he did well for himself. He didn't just stop with making that one single. He made another single, released it in 2012, featuring Wale. He made another single in 2012 called She's Twerking. These are songs that were played everywhere.
They really were.
Single released in 2014, still working. Released an album in 2014, Let's Get It. Features with Wiz Khalifa, Ty Dolla, French Montano, Rich Homie Quan, Waka Flocka. These are not just local artists, these are national artists that Mr. Gibson was working with and worked with. These are 12 tracks. This is a full album, working. These songs aren't making themselves. Released another album in 2014 featuring Snoop Dogg, Rich the Kid, DJ Bobby Black. He worked with these artists. In November of 2014, released another album at 11 tracks. 2014, another album, It's My Time. Keisha, another one, 2015, 17 tracks. Working, owning his craft, touring, taking care of himself. This is the house that cashed him. 2015, 8 tracks. Tracks or songs. Born for This, featuring Rich Homie Quan. Released in 2016. Song called Little Baby. Released in 2016. Ran Up a Check featuring Lil Yachty. Again in 2016. Working. And the list continues to go on. 2016. 2017. 2019. 2020. Those are all songs, albums, Mr. Gibson working, taking care of his business, and building his craft. Now, we are now here in this trial. He's been charged with count 1, a RICO. There's no conspiracy here. There's no criminal enterprise. And there's no structure to any criminal organization.
Here we go again.
The evidence will show that there was no organization that resulted in structure, that resulted in there being a scheme, meetings, officers, the things that you would see in a corrupt, criminal, mafia-style organization that RICO was built for. The evidence is going to show that this goes back, in terms of this indictment, from 2013, 10, 12 plus years ago, to 21. The evidence is going to show that this was put together in a RICO case. They put this together. Now let's talk about some of these persons that you will hear from. Now the allegation, ladies and gentlemen, is that Talicia Dewberry is pimped and pandered. She was interviewed by members of the district attorney's office several years later. 6, 7 years later. 22 maybe, 2022. And you will hear her tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it was not Mr. Gibson, that it's this girl named Raven. That I went to high school with. So I encourage you to follow along and listen to what comes out. It's not a rabbit hole. It's not distractions. It's not going to be any of that. It's going to be asking questions and getting answers. It's this girl named Raven I went to high school with. You're not going to hear that Mr. Gibson recruited her, enticed her to be pimp or pander. Jessica McQuarrie. Keep in mind the dates. 2013, 2014. So the evidence is going to show that she was interviewed in 2022, 8 years later. You will hear that she moved to Georgia from Indiana to be with a man named James Jefferson. She did not come to Georgia to be with John Michael. You will hear that she was in communication with her mother, Christine Spurlock. And there was no pimping or pandering. No simple battery.
A few weeks for the trial, into July.
So you listen to it. Some of it may be hard to hear. Our job is not to be brutal. Our job is not to demean. Our job is to get the information. To get the information so that you can hear it. And so that you can evaluate it. Dominique Wojciechowski, still in 2015 now. Interviewed when? 2022. You see the trend? You're going to see the trend. 2022. You're going to be asking yourself these questions. You're all being interviewed around the same time. I will ask you to follow this case. You will not find any proof that Mr. Gibson committed a sex trafficking on Dominique Wojciechowski. Frederica Spencer and Talithia Wright. I put them together, ladies and gentlemen, because they were together. They were together. The evidence is going to show that they were together when they came to Georgia from Alabama. You're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that they were not, they didn't come here because Mr. Gibson asked them to come here. You're going to hear that they came to Georgia because Deanna Sanders asked them to come to Georgia. And look at the date, August 1 to August 13. They were interviewed when? 2022. One in April, one in August. Now, when we get them on the stand, and when they come and sit and take this witness stand, we're going to talk. We're going to have some conversation. What did they tell the police that morning? You will hear evidence that they're going to tell the police that they were robbed by 3 men at the Delk Road Baymont Inn. But you may hear something different when they take the stand. You may hear that they may say that they were raped by a guy or 2 guys. And we're going to talk about all those things. Because you will have an opportunity to listen to the evidence. You will have an opportunity to weigh the evidence. You will have an opportunity to listen to and evaluate credibility. And you will do that. There was no pimping and there was no pandering by Mr. John Michael Gibson of Frederica Spencer and Talithia Wright. Jasmine Brown. Mr. Gibson is charged with trafficking Jasmine Brown on March 27, 2018. March 28, 18. When she comes into this courtroom and you talk to her and she talks to you and she tells you what she tells you, then we're going to compare what she tells you to what she's told other people. You'll have an opportunity to listen to the evidence. You will have an opportunity to weigh the evidence. You will have an opportunity to weigh the credibility. And you're going to learn that Jasmine Brown is her own person. She did what she wanted. You'll have an opportunity to see text messages. So we're going to go through it. When we go through it, you'll have an opportunity to listen to the evidence. You'll have an opportunity to weigh the evidence. You will have an opportunity to weigh credibility. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard a very long indictment being read. When you heard that indictment being read, there were multiple counts in the indictment. And in that indictment, which is not evidence, but it's a document that they put together, being the district attorney's office. You'll have an opportunity to listen to the evidence. You'll have an opportunity to weigh the evidence. You'll have an opportunity to weigh credibility. Count 24, they're charging Mr. Gibson with aggravated assault. They're saying that Mr. Gibson struck Ms. Brown with a belt that likely caused seriously bodily injury. Then if you just walk a few steps down the road through the path of the indictment, and you'll stumble upon the same allegation charging Mr. Gibson with the same conduct, and they chose to charge it as simple battery now. Count 30. Beating with the belt. This is their document that they charged Mr. Gibson with. You'll have an opportunity to make it make sense in their indictment.
Dara with the 5 gifted subs.
Is it either? How can it be both? Why did they put them both in there? We're going to talk about all those things. I want you to listen carefully. You will not find any belt in evidence. You will not find a picture of a belt in evidence. You will not find a description in any paperwork of a belt. Now, part of this case, they charged Mr. Gibson with keeping a place of prostitution. They're saying that on June 7th at 737 Alpha Road, that this place was a place to practice prostitution. The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that there was a search warrant that was conducted at this address. You will not hear any evidence that in the search of this location that they found condoms, lubricants, baby oil.
Oh no.
No surveillance equipment. You're not going to hear any evidence that there were printed materials promoting illegal services. No ledgers.
Dad, this isn't
or
Diddy.
books. No controlled substances. On the search warrant, they're going to say he fed them drugs. Then they charged Mr. Gibson with willful obstruction on that day in June of 2019. They're saying he refused to come out. The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that he was in the bed. The evidence is going to show that they used some type of tear gas or some other technique or tactic, and that there was gas in the room. There will be evidence that he complied and came out. They charged him with willful obstruction. Ladies and gentlemen, they charged Mr. Gibson with possession of a firearm during the commission or attempt to commit a felony on June 6, 2019 through June 7, 2019. They allege that Mr. Gibson had on him or within arm's reach a handgun during the commission of a felony against and involving the person of another. And the person of another, you will learn that it says trafficking a person for sexual servitude. But the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, will show that the only people in the residence at the time was Mr. Gibson and Miss Adams. The evidence will show that there was no person that alleged to have been trafficked was inside the residence or on the property. So the evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that a gun, but there's no alleged trafficked person in the residence. There's no alleged trafficked person on the property.
Where is Happily Angry Lawyer?
But they find a gun, and they say, oh, it's in possession of a firearm during the commission or attempted commission of trafficking a person. Yeah, this is going to show otherwise on that day. Jordan Adams, ladies and gentlemen, January 11, 2019 through January 12, 2019. They are alleging, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Gibson trafficked by coercion, that he physically confined her and restrained her. That's count 14. And that he raped her on count 10. And that he committed aggravated sodomy, alleging that he forced her to have oral sex on him. That's what's being alleged on January 11th, January 12th, 2019. However, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to point in another direction. What direction, ladies and gentlemen, is it going to point? Where is it going to lead us? Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to show that Jordan Adams, she was handed a folder with 6 photographs. And of those 6 photographs, ladies and gentlemen, it included a picture of Mr. Tyrone Gibson, amongst 5 others. Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Adams picked out a totally different person that she said most like cash out. Now the allegations is that she was sexually assaulted all night long by Mr. Gibson, Mr. Taylor. But she picks out a photograph of someone totally different who is not John Michael Gibson. And on it, she writes, most like cash out. But it doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. It goes farther. In her recorded interview, the day she spoke with the police, the question was asked, well, what did cash out look like? Now, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have been here for 7 or 8 days. We're all human. We all have eyes. Our eyes have vision. And you've had an opportunity to see Mr. Gibson. You all came in here, you looked at Mr. Gibson. You looked at Mr. Taylor. You looked at Ms. Smith. And you eyeballed. Because that's just human nature. So they asked the question, what did cash out look like? She said it's tall. She said maybe 6 feet. 6'2". These are her words. But it doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. The evidence is going to show that it goes farther. There was DNA evidence.
Is
You're
this
going
part?
to hear from Ashley Hinkle. She's a forensic biologist with the GBI. So there was a kit, a sexual assault kit. And this is right after. There's a sexual assault kit that was done. It was preserved. And it was ultimately sent to GBI. And then one day, ladies and gentlemen, they got a Q-tip and they asked Mr. Gibson to open his mouth, and they swabbed the inside of his jaw. And when they did that, they preserved that. And then they sent it to GBI. So now they have the kit that they got from Miss Adams. And now they have the swabbing from Mr. Gibson. And what does the GBI do?
What do you think,
does
Chat?
Ms. Hinkle do? What does the forensic biologist do? They do their science. when they do their science, they offer a report. And that report comes back, ladies and gentlemen, and we have an opportunity to read the report. And the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, is going to show that John Michael Gibson,
The whole
is
name.
excluded from the data obtained from the major contributor genotype obtained from the second fraction from the vaginal vestibule swab. August 27, 2021. Mr. Gibson is charged with human trafficking and pimping of Kiara Adams for the purposes of prostitution. And
Kiara
this
Adams.
is in conjunction with a Gwinnett County case.
Kiara Adams is, we just looked over, and this is just one page, right? So maybe there's others. But she was one of the names, right? Kiara Adams. So these witnesses don't have any deals or benefits conferred, and state motion to grant material witness use and derivative use immunity, Kiara Adams. So I'm pretty sure that's what we're getting.
The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that that case was dismissed at the preliminary hearing in Gwinnett County. Shawn Talbert, July 1, 2020 through July 11, 2020. We charged Mr. Gibson with trafficking through the use of deception and coercion, pimping and pandering, keeping a place of prostitution, going back to that Alfred Road address. Now, what is the evidence going to show? The evidence is going to show that Shawn Talbert got in her vehicle, ladies and gentlemen. She's 32 years old, and that she drove herself to Georgia from Texas in her own vehicle.
That's a long drive.
With her own money. And with her dog. And she's 32 years old. Not 18. This is not a case about minors. This is a case about adults. "32 years old, ladies and gentlemen. For 10 days, that's what they're saying, that he trafficked her. The evidence is going to show that Mr. Tyrone Gibson, John Michael Gibson, did not traffic Shawn Talbert. And we'll get into it. You'll have an opportunity to listen to the evidence, weigh the evidence, and weigh the credibility. We've already talked about the Gwinnett County charges. Now, you may hear jail calls associated with this case. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the state talk about co-conspirators. Well, I don't know if you're co-conspirators or not. That's going to be for you to determine. That's what you're here to do. That's how they are being labeled. Kiara Adams, Deanna Sanders, you will have an opportunity to listen to the evidence on them. You're going to have an opportunity to listen to the evidence on them. You will have the opportunity to weigh the credibility. You will hear that they, on this indictment, you're going to hear that they were charged. Now, you heard the state of Georgia say, well, there have been no promises made. Well, we're going to get into whether there were promises made. We're going to get into whether they made proffers, whether they made statements to the district attorney's office, who was present, what were they facing. You're going to hear all of that. You're going to have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to determine what was their motivation in what they said. What was their interest in what they said? Was there anything, or is there anything over their head? Or do they have to come in here and talk in order for things to go smoothly with their case? You will have an opportunity to judge credibility. You will have an opportunity to determine those things that motivate people to say whatever they're going to say. And then when it's all said and done, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask you to weigh the evidence, listen to the evidence, judge credibility. This is a very long indictment, which is not evidence. There are a lot of witnesses. But if you stay with us, which we know you will, we'll come back later. We'll tie it all together. When we tie it all together, we're going to come back and we're going to ask you to find Mr. John Michael Gibson. Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Mr. Francis, on behalf of Ms. Smith.
These beeps.
Not guilty of charges against her in this indictment. Melynee Smith is not guilty of charges against her in this indictment. You will not see any evidence that Melynee Smith coerced anybody into a life of sexual service. She did not deceive anyone into a life of sexual service. She did not gain financially from anyone's sexual servitude. That she did not subject anyone to sexual servitude. She did not harbor anyone in sexual servitude. And she did not maintain anyone in sexual servitude. All of the witnesses that will come and talk to you have already made statements. And when you listen to those statements, what you'll hear is they sort of barely knew Melynee Smith. She was around, but they sort of barely knew her. No one's going to say that she did anything to force them into sex. You're not going to see a single text message that illustrates that Melynee Smith forced anyone into sex. You're not going to see an Instagram message. You're not going to see a video. You're not going to see a Facebook message. You're not going to see anything that she forced anyone to see anyone into a life of sex. Melynee Smith is not a part of a group of individuals committing crime. She's not. She didn't have, there's going to be no evidence that she had any intent to be a part of any group, that she had any knowledge of any organized crime, any racketeering, anything of that nature. Melynee Smith received some cash checks from a few people over a period of years. She received cash apps from Deanna for a couple reasons. Deanna rented a room from Lindsay with her own money. There's even a check that she wrote to Lindsay. And Kiara used Willie Smith's car and wrecked it. And so, as a result of that, she cashed after the money for her car. So, she is not gaining anything from any enterprise, she's not part of any enterprise. All of the statements that were made to law enforcement, when people were arrested, in this case was investigated, barely mentioned in the letter. Evidence will not be there. You'll see it for yourself. And at the end of the evidence, we ask that you find Ms. not guilty of all charges.
All right. Mr. Hoover.
Your Honor, let's take down the PowerPoint that was announced.
Sure. Look at the PowerPoint. Let's if it's up. Will you
There
take
was
it down?
there was almost a chair squeak. It was a puff of air. And to hear, was this Mr. Hoover? Who's the other attorney?
Ladies and gentlemen, Tyrone Taylor didn't rape Jordan Adams. Tyrone Taylor didn't force himself on Jordan Adams. Tyrone Taylor didn't force Jordan Adams into prostitution. Tyrone Taylor is not guilty of what the state has charged him. Now, this case starts with Jordan Adams way before January 11th and January 12th. This actually starts a couple months earlier in Cobb County. You're going to hear evidence and testimony that Jordan Adams was found under the influence of cocaine, driving a vehicle with her daughter in the back seat. She was arrested for that. Because she was arrested, DFACS gave custody of her daughter to her mother. You're also going to hear evidence that while Jordan Adams was out with that case pending, she stayed in the house with her parents and her daughter. Her father found a syringe full of drugs in the same house her daughter was in. You're going to hear evidence that because she, once again, endangered the life of her daughter, her father kicked her out of the house. Fast forward to January 11th. A couple months later, Jordan Adams happens to be at a gas station. Supposedly, she's telling people that she's going to the airport because she doesn't have.
This is going to be
anywhere
messy.
She goes to the gas station, runs into Tyrone Taylor. Goes up to Tyrone, hey, can you give me a couple bucks so I can get to the airport? Tyrone says, yes, I will help you out. Gives her a couple dollars. Tyrone says, hey, can I have your phone number? Jordan says, yes. Willingly gave Tyrone her phone number after he gave her a couple dollars. Fast forward a couple hours, Tyrone's texting her, hey, what's up? Hey, what are you doing? Where you at? Jordan Adams says, I can't talk right now because I don't have a place to stay. I'm a little busy. I don't have a place to stay. So Tyrone goes, hey, if you need some help, you can come stay with us for a little while. Jordan Adams says, okay, tells Tyrone where she is. Tyrone doesn't have a car of his own at the time, so he sends a friend to pick her up. Jordan Adams willingly gets into this vehicle. No one forced her to. Jordan Adams and the friend drives Jordan Adams to the Airway Motel where Tyrone's staying. Jordan Adams willingly gets out of the vehicle. No one forced her to. Jordan Adams goes up to the door, knocks on it, and willingly goes into Tyrone's room. No one forced her to. Now, once in the room, drugs are there. Everyone's, or not everyone, people are doing drugs, stuff is happening, that's it. That's all we know as of right now. Fast forward, Jordan starts to tell this story about what happens in that room, and depending on who she's talking to, her story changes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear the evidence is going to show you that the very first person that Jordan was communicating with was her mother, via text message. The evidence is going to show you Jordan never said, hey mom, I'm being raped by two men, send help. You're never going to see evidence that says, hey mom, I'm being tortured and kidnapped by two men, this is where I am. Hey mom, I'm being held on my own, I have nowhere to go, nothing to do, please send help. What you're going to hear is Jordan said things like, don't call anyone because I'll go to jail. Or mom, I'm going to call a friend to come pick me up, I'll take care of that on my own. Or mom, don't say anything that's going to get me in trouble. The state wants you to believe that Tyrone Taylor and Mr. Gibson are raping Jordan Adams from 6 to 12 hours, torturing her, abusing her, kidnapped her,
the very first person she talks to about this, and she basically says, don't call anyone because I'm going to get arrested. Fast forward to, January 12th when she's talking to officers. Second story. Second time she has an opportunity to say what actually happened. Now the evidence is going to show you that she tells officers, as soon as she walks into that room, Tyrone made her take a shower, and then the rape started happening immediately. She says it's Tyrone is the only one raping her, and basically for about 3 to 4 hours, it's Tyrone continuously. He would get up, he would stop for a minute, and then he'd go right back to her. First time she talks to an officer, that's what she says. Then she adds in, well, you know what? It happened up to about 3 a.m., then Mr. GIBSON shows up. And now it's 2 men raping her from 3 a.m. till 9 a.m. the same morning. So with this story, she tells the cops that 2 men are brutally raping her, torturing her, physically holding her down to the point where she can't move or breathe. They're choking her to where she can't move or breathe. She is scratching them, she is fighting them, but she can't stop. Sometimes both of them rape her together. Sometimes they rape her one by one. Sometimes they use condoms. Sometimes they didn't. And every time one of them would stop, they would give her cocaine. So ladies and gentlemen, the first time she talks to an officer, she says, 2 men raped me from 9 to 12 hours straight. They never really stopped because one of them were always doing something. But when one would pause, I would have cocaine. So she's getting raped, tortured, and beaten, and drugged for 9 to 12 hours straight. A month later, she's talking to other officers. This time, she tells officers, well, when I got to the room, I took a shower. Tyrone didn't rape me for the first few hours. The rape didn't start until 3 a.m. when Mr. GIBSON shows up. Story's already starting to change again. This time, she goes on to say, yes, they both raped me for all this time. They drugged me the entire time. I couldn't do anything about it. But I was scratching them. I was doing all that, but I couldn't do anything else about it. The first time they talked to the officers, Jordan Adams said, well, all I saw was cocaine. They kept giving me cocaine. The second time they talked to the officers, Jordan Adams, oh no, there was cocaine, there was heroin, there was marijuana, there was vodka, there was tequila. We were doing everything. Her story completely changes every single time. What we do know at some point, Jordan is not in that room with Tyrone, she's not in that room with Mr. GIBSON. Jordan, for 3 hours, let Jordan tell you, she is walking up and down the street from the hotel to the Citgo. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is why this is so important. While Jordan Adams was walking up and down the street from the Citgo, she was by herself. We have no idea where Mr. GIBSON is because she kind of forgets about him and doesn't say anything, but she says Tyrone was in the hotel room. So Miss Adams is walking up and down the street by herself with a cell phone. She goes to the Citgo. We know the day before she was 100% okay with begging people for money so she can get help. But now, fast forward, she's been raped by 2 men she doesn't know for 6 to 12 hours, depending on who she's talking to. She goes to the Citgo. She doesn't tell anybody she got raped. She doesn't go inside to the employee and say, hey, I'm being raped. I've been kidnapped. They're forcing me to prostitute. She doesn't do that. For 3 hours, she's walking up and down that street, seeing people, communicating with people. She never once said, help me, I have been raped. I am being tortured. I've been kidnapped. They're forcing me into prostitution. Ladies and gentlemen, you're also going to hear that during this time, Jordan Adams runs into the hotel manager. The manager goes out, what are you doing? Why are you walking around? Jordan Adams does not say, help me, I have been raped. She does not say, help me, I have been kidnapped. I have been tortured. They are beating me and forcing me into prostitution. Jordan says, you know what, I'm going to go get some cigarettes. That's why I'm walking, so I'm just going to get cigarettes. Those 2 times, Jordan could have told somebody, I need help. Again, she had her cell phone this entire time. Tyrone's nowhere around. Mr. GIBSON disappears. She never called a family member and said, hey mom, this is where I am, come get me. I've been raped. She never called a friend, hey, this is where I am, location drop, come get me, I've been raped. Citgo gas station, doesn't say a word. Hotel manager, doesn't say a word. Has a cell phone in her hand by herself, doesn't say a word. But the state wants you to believe that 2 men raped her for half a day, up to 12 hours, and she doesn't leave. And just to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see that the Citgo is half a mile away from the hotel, the Airway Motel, where it used to be. That's 2,640 feet. Takes about 10 minutes to walk there. You're also going to see the Atlanta Police Department Zone 4 precinct was 410 feet away from that hotel. It takes less than 2 minutes to get there. And what's crazy, to get to the Citgo from the hotel, she passed the precinct. So what that means, for 3 hours, she's walking up and down the street, past the police precinct, but she never goes in. She never goes up there and says, hey, these 2 guys are raping me. These 2 guys are forcing me into prostitution. These 2 guys are beating me with the butt of a gun, and they're torturing me, and I can't breathe. But the state wants you to believe that they raped her for 12 hours. She's by herself the entire time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're also going to hear testimony that allegedly Tyrone, after he forced her out in prostitution, said, if a man picks you up, take him to the Quality Inn. The Quality Inn is right next door to the precinct. Once again, she has an opportunity to go to another hotel to tell somebody, away from these 2 men, I'm getting raped and abused. She didn't do it. There's a reason she didn't do it, ladies and gentlemen. Because she got kicked out of her house while she was out with a pending case for drugs, doing drugs and making money the only way she knows how. That's why she was out there in Fulton Industrial. But the state wants you to believe that 2 men raped her, tortured her, beat her, choked her, suffocated her, crushed her body, and drugged her the entire time for 6 to 12 hours. Yet Jordan Adams still had enough power and strength and energy to walk up and down the street for 3 hours and didn't tell anybody about that. With a cell phone in her hand, nobody around. Now, at some point, an officer is going to ask her, well, why didn't you just walk away? Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Adams' response to that is because they had my stuff in that room. The officer said, what was the stuff? Jordan Adams said, some of my clothes and a phone charger. The state wants you to believe that 2 men raped her, beat her, and tortured her, and kidnapped her, and forced her into prostitution for half a day, up to 12 hours, and the reason she didn't leave was because she didn't have all her clothes and a phone charger. Does that make sense? Absolutely not. Now, Mr. Matthews touched a little bit on DNA evidence, and he was right, the SANE kit was done, just like they swabbed Mr. Gibson's mouth, they swabbed Mr. Taylor's mouth. What that means is they put a little swab in there, get your DNA, send it off to be tested. Ladies and gentlemen, through this investigation, officers also documented and collected gray bedding from the Airway Motel room, black bedding from the Airway Motel room, 1 used condom, swabs from both of their mouths, the rape kit. Now, with the rape kit, this is very important. They collected swabs from the vaginal vault, swabs from the vaginal vestibule, anus swabs, oral cavity swabs, inner thigh swabs.
And she said they didn't use protection.
Swab, right side nail swab, known head hair, left side nail clippings, and right side.
Have a good night, Tapiz. Thanks for hanging out.
They collected all of that evidence, and what you are not going to hear in this trial at all is that they can find Tyrone Taylor's DNA on him. A man that raped her, beat her, and tortured her for 6 to 12 hours, depending on what she says and who she's talking to, they won't find DNA. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to see any pictures in this trial to where she's beaten. You're not going to see pictures in this trial where she's scratched. She only had a hangnail at this point. She's not bleeding. She's not cut up. And she has the energy to walk around after being raped for half a day. You're not going to see any of that. On top of that, you're not going to have DNA that says this is Tyrone Taylor's, but they want you to believe the 2 men raped this young lady for 12 hours, abused her, kidnapped her.
Get a 12-hour counter
to walk the street. You've heard them present their case. I just ask you, please listen to everything presented to you in this courtroom for the next few weeks. Not only do you get to hear what our witnesses say, you actually get to see them when they say it. That's really important. Because I'm pretty sure Jordan Adams is going to get up here, she's going to start crying. You don't have to worry about just the crying. You get to see and hear everything that's going on. Before you make your final decision, please take your notes, write everything down, pay attention, focus on what you see and what you hear, And I'm confident you will find Tyrone Taylor not guilty of all the charges the state's bringing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let me just say this to all of you. If at any point you have to use the restroom, don't sit there uncomfortable. Don't even let me know, okay? With that, call your first witness.
State calls, Technical
Okay. We have we need a break for a few minutes. Okay, so we'll take 5 minutes.
All right for the jury.
There's a little bit more while they're doing their break. We'll come back and see what else transpires. There's 3 co-defendants on trial here. I think this would be a good time to take a look at, who's actually listed under this case now that we've heard names in openings. And I think, let's see. Ms. Lele had asked, how many people on trial? Can we look at the charges? Can we look at the indictment? I can't open a copy of the indictment. It says hidden, but we can get some information. If we open up this case, and if you want to look it up yourself, it's 23 SC 186464. We have the state of Georgia versus Tyrone Orlando Taylor, who we know that's who Shawn Hoover was just representing. John Michael HAKEEM GIBSON, that's cash out, represented by Careton Matthews. Raven Mills, so that's a name we heard. And if we open into her case, that's closed out. She was facing a single charge, offense date of May 1st, 2013, violation of the Georgia RICO. It was dispositioned under First Offender Act, and this is closed out. So all of these documents, I can't really go and download the stuff, but we can make of what's available what we can make of it. Who else do we have? We have Torres Drain. I think we heard that name. Let me open that. Let's see if we got anything interesting here. Oh, so Shawn Hoover's also representing Nesto, and we're probably going to see him with the 4PF stuff. And OMF. So I don't know if he's going to come into play with that, but I heard that he was, it was George Cheedy. You guys remember George Cheedy was the reporter that said, in the hallway after the ex parte issue on Friday, June 7th, Judge Glanville told Cheedy, you can't publicize and record Kenneth Copeland Woody being taken out in handcuffs and arrested. And George Cheedy reported on that because, it wasn't appropriate for that kind of order. But George Cheedy did a story a few months ago mentioning Shawn Hoover, and Shawn Hoover was planning in case maybe there's a little baby indictment coming down. And I think GACDL, or the Georgia Public Defender's Unit, is prepared for that indictment to grow. So Shawn Hoover, he's also, I think he was in play for one of the YSL co-defendants at some point. I feel like I saw him listed. I don't think it was someone that went to trial or almost went to trial in YSL 2. I just forget. But we also have Torres. Let's go back over to this. He had some charges. It says closed. His case says closed. He had a trial. So he had jury verdict guilties. And then a null pros on receipt, possession, or transport of firearm by convicted felon or felony first offender. So he was convicted of rape, of trafficking a person for sexual servitude, of ag assault, and false imprisonment. And, oh, actually, no, he was not guilty on one of the ag assaults. He was also not guilty on 16-11-106, possession of a firearm or knife during commission of or attempt to commit certain felonies. So I'd have to rewatch these openings and see when his name was mentioned, where he comes into play. I'm sure we'll hear his name come up again during trial, but his case is closed. Let's go back over here. Next would be Demetrius Lamont. Demetrius Lamont Edwards, a.k.a. Drama. Let's see. This is an open case. This is still open. He's got RICO, trafficking for sexual servitude, and criminal attempt to commit a felony. And, yeah, all of this stuff is closed up too. No hearings scheduled, so I don't know what's going on with this. Next we have Samuel Lionel Vinnie, a.k.a. Sam. Just charged with RICO, and he's guilty, it looks like a plea of some sort, and that's closed up. And next is Deanna Chantel Sanders, also offense date of May 1st, 2013, violate RICO, and this is open for her. So, and was that one of the names? We'll double check when we get back to, I guess we could open up GIBSON, the use immunity. Who was the second name? So we're flipping back over to cash out. And it's not as descriptive right now. So I don't know why it's not displaying all the motions. I don't think it's letting me search where these words are. So rather than waste time when I'm replaying it, I'll double check on that. We'll pull it back up later. If we go over to Kiera Danielle Adams, this one, a.k.a. Boots, not Steve Sadow. We know that we saw that there was a state's motion for immunity for Kiera Adams. Her case is open. She's got a long list here. So she has this May 1st offense, violating the RICO Acts. That's when they're saying this all started. She's got trafficking a person for sexual servitude, pimping, but it's qualified as a misdemeanor. Keeping a place of prostitution herself, I guess, willful obstruction of law enforcement officers, trafficking a person for sexual servitude. These are 2 years apart. So we have May 27th, 2018 and July 1st, 2020. And then we get pimping, pandering, and public indecency as a separate charge. So that's still open. And we know that the state at least motioned for use and derivative immunity for Kiera Adams, a.k.a. Boots. We've got Danielle. And just so you guys know, the arrest of Cash Out was April 14th, 2022. So, you know, this has been taking some time to get where we are. Where did the window go for... Did I click the wrong window? Yeah, I wanted to open... Yeah, I opened Kiera again. I think I saw Danielle and thought it was a different person. And then we'll be at Linda Smith. So Linda Smith is one of the co-defendants on trial here. Her list is a little bit shorter. She has the same March 27th, 2018, trafficking a person for sexual servitude. But she has a April 29th, 2019, trafficking a person for sexual servitude. And then she also has these July 1st dates. So there's going to be, it looks like, some overlap with 2 incidents with Linda, a.k.a. Mama Cash Out, and Kiera Adams. So we'll see how that goes. And the first name of the attorney, I heard Mr. Francis, but Dennis is his first name. That was who delivered openings on behalf of Miss Smith. So, I don't know, maybe we'll be able to figure out how we can... It looks like certain stuff was filed to be under seal, but I'm not sure if it was everything. But maybe just as a precaution, they just said, womp, shut it all down. And as far as I know, it looks like they added the RICO when they did the re-indictment in March of 2023. Because initially, here's an article from TMZ back in 2022 about the arrest. I did look at a few others. They're reporting, you know, they arrest the group, there's all these allegations of horrible things. Do we see... I mean, there's just no RICO mentioned here. So I do believe when they re-indicted, that's when they added the RICO. So... And... Oh no, so George Chidi did some reporting earlier this year, like, that mentioned, like, upcoming cases. So he's still reporting. He's still reporting. And we'll get back over to this window. Oh, this facial expression. Just like a deep breath. There we go. That's kind of I guess an overview of what we're dealing with what we cannot see from the indictment. But we're going to hear as we move into it more about the details of each scenario. And I'm sure we'll get clues based on the words that the prosecution uses, what elements they're trying to establish for certain things, for certain instances. Unless they're not very good at doing it. We'll see. Also, before we hit play, I don't like to stop for super chats. We're using a break here to do it. So if you've been watching like other streams where we're a bit more casual and I read them right away, I'm not trying to ignore everybody. I thank everybody for hanging out. You never have to send a super chat. But if you do, it's greatly appreciated. GV kicked it off. Member for 9 months, which is super, super awesome, especially since I was not streaming for a month and a half. GV's back and says, hey, I missed you all, co-conspirators, with the green heart. Kevin Kirksey, another familiar face, said, oh, good old Woody. And I think it's going to be hard not to make references to him throughout this, even though I doubt he has any involvement. You never know. Kissin' Pink, good to see you. Been hanging out with you over at Club Classy. Says, Haas long to love causing a mistrial motion. I do not think we'll get through this trial with 0 mistrial motions. I'll tell you that much. Taybiz TV, I think, head out for the night. Make sure you guys go check Taybiz TV out. He does a lot of different trial coverages, especially in the early stages before it actually gets into the courtroom. Recently covering Mickey Steins, but also done some Karen Reed stuff. Great, great stuff over there. His voice is so easy to listen to. Felicia Fee says, here we go with the blazing purple heart. Good to see you, Felicia. Leah Senpei, this is a great reminder if you're going to head out of here before catching the end. Says, like this video or love will come yell at you. So nobody wants that. Please do it for all of us. Whether it's altruism, selfishness, benevolence, hit the like button because none of us want to hear that. Good to hang out with you like all day, Leo. Black Butterfly, someone that just always knows so much information about more than just the YSL case. I feel like tons of different cases. So good to see you checking this one out. Thank you for the 2. So sounded like roller coaster instructions. Yeah, the judge's tone of voice delivering, she was very easy to listen to. But at the end when she was like, unfortunately, you will not be able to keep your notes. She just said it with such like a solemn tone. We'll see how this judge is. I know her name, but I don't think I've really watched anything with her. Chloe Albert's Revenge with the comedy coming back around. And we're not renaming Chloe. We're going to stick with Chloe. Says, I'm sorry. I'm 100% sure I saw RICO get deported on the news. He was on a plane like 2 months ago. So where is RICO? Where's little Mike and Quez? When are they going to have their day in court? Chloe, I hope you've been doing well. It's good to see you. We always miss you when we get together in like Flesh of the God streams and you're not there. You're always missed. So hope you're doing well. Sunshine for you 1 with the 2. Thank you. No comment, just pure love. And then Nick, big Nick Starro. So I saw Nick Starro mention he might start doing the Friday panels with this case going on. So if you guys remember during the YSL trial, on Fridays, I think like 6 p.m. Eastern was usually the time that you'd start. You know, big panel show, tons of different guests. So I would say start looking for that again. In addition to that, I think, Nick, you've been doing the summaries of Karen Reed, which is winding down, but you've also been doing Judge Simpson coverage. Everybody seems to love Judge Simpson. So if you're looking for things to fill your time, especially with Karen Reed, defense rested today. If you need other stuff to watch, you know, tons of different cases that you probably haven't heard about if you're just following Karen Reed over with Nick. So tons of reasons to go over there. Big thank you for the woo and for the 5 gifted subs. And then LaShawn V, thank you for becoming green. And Miss Lele, thank you for becoming green. So we're growing the gang. We're going to see if anything interesting happens here. We'll unfreeze his face here.
And you all let me know as well. If there needs to be a break for the rest of the meeting.
I started the buffer when I pulled up trial watch clips. The chatter, Nancy knew one too. Also tons of knowledge here beyond Fulton County, but a lot of Fulton County stuff. You always are dropping gems in the chat. Thank you for the super. Nancy says there was a Tyrone Taylor involved in the jail fight / riot that Yak Diamante Kendrick took a plea to. I wonder if this is him. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, if it lets us look up like where people are being held, that would help narrow it in. Let me double check. I didn't see. Let me pull up Tyrone Taylor's name while we watch this, and we'll look. I hear Love. I hear her. I hear her. Oh my God. Okay, I think they're just gonna let us hear Love and then they're ending the stream. So there's no value in this. It's just for the torture. Oh no, they do come back. Okay. Unless you want to hear the quiet chitter chatter of Love.
I think when
They just be leaving the sound on now?
defender's lawyer, when he got up, I think he punched him.
He got punched on me? What is he saying?
I was like, oh, look at that.
Then after I moved, of course, you know, I'm no engineer. I moved like, it's too loud. I went to go to the other thing. Just put it in.
What are they talking about? The computer noises?
Yeah.
They gotta learn to mute this.
Oh, yeah. see
I appreciate
you
that.
need a chair, brother? You want a chair?
Well,
You just put it right there. It's up to you.
well,
It's up to you.
nah,
All right.
I'm good.
Yeah, this judge will definitely allow snacks. There's been cups on the table.
Oh, yeah, man, you see that. I see what you're talking about. All right, good. You gotta be smart now. Don't play yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, at first I was shooting over that wing.
I'm so nosy.
I was like, okay, I'm finna get a wide shot.
Oh, are they talking about the jury?
Yeah. Usually, it's on that other camera or something.
Yeah.
They're talking about showing the jury on screen. Oh
Why they had it on this camera?
Yeah.
They got it on that
I don't
camera.
know. It was on the camera that was shooting. At first it was them just
Yeah.
those, and it was shooting back this way.
Yeah, you
Then
shoot,
they-
yeah. We usually have those two on.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
no! A hot mic about the hot
It
camera.
was showing
Chat.
on that one,
Yep.
in the front, that one over here, there. I was like, oh.
Yeah. They're straight showing this.
Yeah.
They never had that camera on.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna really can block. They want it on for some reason. They're making it though.
Well, I appreciate it though.
Sergeant Pilgrim? Come here for just a second, please.
Sergeant Pilgrim. What are they doing? So now they have Careton on the hot mic? Now they finally mute it. They finally mute it. But apparently the state doesn't have a witness to call. Chad, this is a hot mess on day one. Oh my gosh. And yes, so William Fagan, I didn't know which defense attorney you were asking about, but it was Earnelle Winfrey that did the opening for the prosecution. Careton Matthews was the first up for defense opening. Dennis Francis was second, and then third was Shawn Hoover. Those are the attorneys that did openings. We get the little fashion walk here. This camera person, he said, let me focus on a defendant. Oh my gosh. At this rate. So do they not do anything the rest of the day? Okay, this is everything on the bingo card already. We have a mention of wildlife and opening statements. We have, maybe it seems like, a charge of possession during commission of a crime where no crime is actually alleged. That's a nice motif of Fulton County. So indictment issues. Redoing the indictment to add RICO in. The music label is the criminal enterprise, and that's how the crime was how the money was made, not because of the tours. We had a SANE kit that was actually eventually tested where they wanted to test something, but it ended up seeming like it could be exculpatory, so we'll see how that goes. And now we have, looks like court ending early or running short because nobody has a witness ready. Guys, it's everything. It's everything. I might be missing some elements. There's Adriane Love. We have the smart water back. We showed the jury. We showed the jury on stream. That was an issue in the YSL trial. So there's another one. Oh yeah, they are obsessed with the house. They have a house in this trial. So we had the web and the greenhouse over in YSL trial. We have the whatever they built this house with the proceeds of their crime in this trial. We're getting all the motifs. Yeah, let's see what they do with the finance, and then it just ends like that. Yeah, so that was that, you guys.
Manager.
So we'll get Shawn Hoover on the screen as a placeholder. So sorry to mislead you guys thinking there was more for us to see on this stream. It looked like they came back and did something, but it never actually turned into that. Yeah, is anyone missing a watch? Is there anybody missing a watch? It seems like we're going to get some type of immunity or plea deals. And it seems like the prosecution's going to act like that's no big deal. I think we're chalking it all up. We're going to get to the full bingo card. We don't need to just get one bingo in a row. We're going to fill the whole card. Oh my gosh, you guys. So that is wrapping it up here. Let's look at, let's see. Tyrone Taylor. Did it load the name for me? And I'm a little nervous because there could be so many different Tyrone Taylors, and it seems like Fulton County uses the wrong names. So, let's see. I mean, the somewhat recent stuff. Let's see what this one is. Yeah, here you go. There you go. We do have a Tyrone Taylor. There is no Orlando, but there is the riot in penal institution. So, and then if we pull up this number, yeah, there you go. You got Diamante Kendrick here. So that might not be the same Tyrone Taylor. They don't list an AKA. Do they give like a birth date or anything? Unless, does anyone know if he appeared in person in front of Judge McBurney on one of those hearing dates? Because if he had to appear, maybe we could just see on a stream. So it was certainly a Tyrone Taylor. You're right. Small world. And with the number of people they seem to cram in these different, custodial facilities in the Fulton County area and surrounding neighbors. Small world. Oh, okay. William Fagan says Fonnie was trying to smear Whitaker on Fox 5 today. Let's go to Fox 5's channel. Was it part of a longer segment? Or like, did you watch it on YouTube or were you watching it on 3 hours ago? Yeah, I don't think any of these titles look like clips for that. Is that so? It was on regular news. But it was at another comment of like, blame the judges. Oh, so William says she failed to mention that Eppinger is already doing heavy time on the same charges. I mean, but you know what? Like, the process, no matter what Fonnie wants to say about Eppinger specifically, if you look at all of the other pleas and the jury verdict for the two that took it all the way to the end, like, you can't blame that stuff on the judge. And only like 2 or 3 of the sentencings in relation to pleas, only 2 or 3 of the pleas were non-negotiated anyway, which means everything else was agreed to by her office. So it's just stupid. It's just stupid. You know, Happily Angry Lawyer did a video about his thoughts on the Amazing Time. So if you want a nice little nightcap, or maybe if you're waking up, if you're in a different time zone, I'm going to drop that link in the chat here. He did that yesterday. And remember, they are soon filing their appeal for Antonio Sledge, so make sure I'm obviously going to talk about that when I see it. And I don't know how much he'll say publicly while things are, you know, still in progress. But of course, follow him on X for the updates that he's willing to share. And watch me, because I'll say what I want to say without any filter over here. Okay, lawyer on Fanny's statement to press. Is that the right link? All right, so that's dropped in the chat for you guys. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. And there we go. And I agree, like, closing this loop on whatever Fannie might have said about Whitaker, I don't know. I'm sure it was a complete deflection from any accountability in the way the DA's office, specifically with Fannie and her statements about cases, pursues and navigates cases. I'm sure whatever she said was a complete deflection from any accountability. And probably an embracing of the rest of the results, right? Because at the end of the day, she got a plea from Young Thug. And she has technically guilty dispositions. A plea of guilty, still a guilty disposition on RICO counts, criminal street gang activity counts. So she gets to say she took down a gang. But nobody that paid attention enough, I really think, buys that for what it is. But yeah, William, I agree. The thing is, Paige threw them so many bones. The DA's office could have got nothing with how badly they did. Yep. What did she say? Like, I'm tired of cleaning up, or I keep having to clean up the mess for you. Just crazy. So I see FFS is dropping in the chat. You missed all the boop noises during the computer kept booping. All right, guys. So I am currently covering a separate trial, the Megan Jackson trial. I've been starting that around 4 p.m. Eastern. My workload's kind of crazy, so if I have meetings, I usually can't be flexible with my time. I have to actually be on Zoom and can't also be on camera over here. Unless you guys want me to try, I can see if I can finagle the bagel. But I have been covering that. It's probably only going to be a few more days. It doesn't seem like the defense is going to put on too many witnesses, although maybe they will. Once that ends, I'll have more space to do the cash out. And this is going to be crazy, so I'm excited to follow it gavel to gavel. But I can start covering it like live more so when it starts and like in action, like starting at 9 o'clock when court starts, probably starting maybe next week, unless I have a work conflict. So I don't have a guaranteed schedule. I probably won't be able to do 9 a.m. this week with these cash out days, but we'll catch up in the evenings and or this weekend. And when the other trial wraps up, we'll get going full steam. The other trial, by the way, hot mess. That's right. It's an affair. Some lady, she transports bodies for a living. She started dating the coroner. And then the prosecution's theory, the coroner already took a plea deal. They dropped the murder charge and he pled guilty to conspiracy and accessory after the fact. So he's facing 20 years, but they're not sentencing him until after he testifies against his like mistress lady, Megan Jackson. So Megan Jackson's on trial. And when I tell you, they have all the reports, they have all the surveillance footage, they have like every point in time, like every 15 minutes, they have a license plate reader for both their vehicles. They were using work vehicles. They have locations of their phones going to the exact locations. They have reports. Like, it's just not what I'm used to watching. After seeing how YSL, their lack of surveillance and reports, watching Karen Reed issues with chain of custody and whatever. It's really refreshing to watch. Although people were saying, before we started watching this trial, people were saying the prosecutor in that trial reminds them of like a South Carolinian Adriane Love, and she really does. So if you want to check that out, we did 2 days of it. Tomorrow will be day 3. You can probably get caught up on 2 times speed if you want to hang out with that tomorrow. And hit the bell for notifications on Cash Out until next week. Next week, I'll start doing it on a regular scheduled time. So it's good to see everybody. Really awesome to see everybody. Glad that we're not forgetting about the Fulton County shenanigans. Yeah. T. Wood says, how do you not have a witness on the first day of trial? Maybe they expected pauses and long opening statements like Adriane Love style. I don't know. So, but what else is new? Hope to see everybody. If you are interested in watching the Cash Out trial in real time, I think Flesh of the Gods might be streaming it in real time. Nick Starro might be, but I know he's covering other topics as well, so he might also be doing like an off-schedule type thing. Classy Beats might mix it in. I saw him in the chat right before I had to leave to start my stream for Megan Jackson. I saw him pop in on Fox 5 stream. So those are some other channels if you're looking to watch it live. Otherwise, it seems like Fox 5 Atlanta is the camera pool. They've got the camera feed. I haven't seen other stations in there yet. Maybe they'll all get in there though once this gets some traction. So everyone have a good night. I'm gonna go. My roommate, I smelled popcorn. Made some popcorn during this stream. I'm like super hungry and I'm gonna go eat something. So everybody take care. So good to see everyone. Thanks for hanging out and see you somewhere. Bye guys.